Hi, everyone. Good evening. Welcome. We'll start in another minute. So if we can, as we're all kind of entering in, if we can put in our names, where we're from, uh, what brings us here today, what we're looking forward to, would be lovely to hear from all of you.
Sagarika, just curious, what made you take up early intervention as a topic on this day? It's very
I'll
close
get to
to my
it.
heart.
So, thank you. We'll get to the reasons actually. We did want to speak about that, but it's also a topic where we realized Eight Step is also interested, and it was like a good, middle point for us to collaborate with them. So that was one of the reasons. I'll get to the others when I talk a bit more about the work we've been doing, Soumya and I. So yeah, just waiting for others to join, and then we'll start on this.
All right, I think it's 4:02 and we have quite a few people here already. So let's not wait any longer. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining in this evening. And today is a special day. It's the International Day for Persons with Disabilities. And on this occasion, we have Vidhi Centre for Legal Policy hosting a very special masterclass for us. Vidhi Centre for Legal Policy is an independent think tank undertaking legal research to make better laws and improve governance for the public good. The team here today is a disability and inclusion and access team at Vidhi, and it's dedicated to improving the implementation of the Rights of Persons with Disabilities Act 2016. So today's session that we have, it's called Starting Strong, a masterclass. What's in store? So you will understand the rights of children with disabilities and why early support matters, the role of educators, schools, and governments um, to make inclusive in education a reality, a guide to help families with early identification and disability certification and accessing support, and simple strategies that can help make classrooms more inclusive and welcoming for all learners. With that, I'm going to hand over to Sagarika and Soumya, research fellows from Vidhi, to take over. Later in the session, we also have Bhargavi Ajit ma'am, an educator who is a special guest and who will talk about early intervention. Over to you, Sagarika, Soumya.
Thanks, Sita. Hello, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining. We are really, really happy that so many people have turned up. So before we start, and before we get into any of this, we want to introduce a poll to understand where we all are right now. Like, what is our understanding of the legal framework right now? I hope all of you are seeing the poll. We'll just take 30 seconds to fill this if that's okay with everyone. I hope everyone's filled it. Should I end it?
No, just 2 minutes.
Okay, okay. We'll give you 15 more seconds. Okay, we're going to wait for like 10 seconds more and then we're going to close this poll. Great. Thank you, everyone. Before I get to the results of this poll, I just want to introduce all of you to Soumya and me and to our organization, Vidhi. As Hita said, Vidhi is an independent legal think tank undertaking research to make to make better laws and to improve governance for the public good. The Disability Inclusion and Access team at Vidhi was set up in 2023 to focus on improving the implementation of the Rights of Persons with Disabilities Act. We try to use the law as a catalyst and to shape the public narrative to improve the implementation of the existing legal and policy framework. Given the cross-cutting nature of disability, our team has been engaging in various projects in different sectors. Primarily, our work focuses on accessibility and on inclusive education. But other than that, we have also engaged with the DEPWD to publish a compendium of easy to understand legal cases and also cases from the disability courts. If any of you are interested, I would really recommend that you check that out as well. Other than this, we've also been working on how to make how to ease the issues that consumers with disabilities face. But today we are here to talk about our work in inclusive education. So Soumya and I have been working for almost a year on our report on inclusive education called Barriers to Bridges, a roadmap to improve the implementation of inclusive education in government schools in India. So while we were researching for this report, what we realized was that one of the most important aspects of improving implementation is to ensure that the stakeholders who are at the end of the day going to do the last mile implementation have the adequate awareness and have the capacity to be able to deliver this efficiently. And in order to do that, we realized that having legal awareness workshops is a great avenue for us to use our expertise while also increasing awareness for the stakeholders in the education ecosystem. So that's what brings us here. I think someone asked me in the beginning, why did we choose early identification as a topic? Again, it's a topic really close to our hearts, Soumya and I as well. We believe that if children are not screened on time and not given the interventions that they need early, the problems only keep compounding and eventually it's been seen that children with disabilities tend to drop out of school or stay out of school because they've not been given the adequate support when they need it. So this is why we thought that it's important to talk to teachers, educators, civil society organizations, and researchers on what inclusion is, why it's important, and why early intervention is a crucial link to inclusive education. Uh, to start out, I'll just share my screen. Just give me 1 second. I hope you all are able to see my screen now. So as we spoke, this masterclass is going to cover these broad topics. First, I will be talking about an overview of the rights of children with disabilities. and what the legal framework is on inclusion. Post this, Soumya will take over to talk about what early identification is, what early intervention is, why it's important, and what the roles of stakeholders are in this. We'll then move to certification for disabilities. And in the end, we'll hear from our expert, Bhargavi ma'am, who's an educator who has been working in inclusive education and early education for almost the last 20 years. So we are really happy to have her here, and we look forward to hearing from you, Bhargavi ma'am. I just a couple of things for everyone to note. We'll be taking questions in the end. So I request everyone to put in your questions in the question and answer option that Zoom gives you. That way we'll have all the questions together in one place, and then we can get to answering them together. The other aspect of this is that we'll be sharing a feedback form towards the end of the session, and we'll be sharing some quizzes right in the middle to just to see if everyone is on the same page as us. Before we start, I just wanted to discuss the results of the previous quiz. If anyone can help me with, oh yeah, I see it. 1 second. Is everyone able to see it as well? Great.
Yeah.
So why we wanted to do this questionnaire before we start? As lawyers, we understand that the law plays a very important role in securing the rights of children with disabilities. But what we realize is that a lot of stakeholders are actually unaware about what the legal rights are. We wanted to see where we are starting so that we are able to gauge how much we've helped stakeholders understand what children with disabilities should be provided with and what inclusive education is. So here we see that most people are either not aware or have heard a bit about the RPWDA. And similarly, most people are slightly familiar or moderately familiar about early identification. However, it's really nice to see that there are lots of people who are familiar as well. This question is very telling actually. The Prussian's checklist, most people are not familiar with it, and this is an important aspect of our presentation as well. And lastly, I think Deen Dayal and UDID, most people are kind of familiar with. So to start out with what inclusion is. So the Rights of Persons with Disabilities Act guarantees the right to equal protection for all persons with disabilities. And especially, it also guarantees the right to education for children with disabilities. In the RPWDA Act, inclusion means a system where everyone learns together. So it is a kind of classroom where children with and without disabilities are given the same opportunities and they are able to learn and grow together with each other. In the past, India has moved away from exclusion and segregation, where children with disabilities were not allowed the same children with disabilities were not allowed the same rights as other children, and they were not allowed to be in the same classrooms as other children. But eventually, India has moved from segregation to integration, which was a time where children with disabilities were studying in the same schools, but not in the same classes. So they were not taught the same things. We have finally, with the RPWDA Act, moved to inclusion, where children with disabilities are included in the same class as all other children. Here we would like to play a short video to just introduce everyone to the importance of inclusive education.
Soumya, the audio is not coming through. You need to reshare by selecting share with audio.
Soumya, would it be possible for you to share the screen instead? How many ever times we did technical checks, I think we still have reached a place where we're not sure why it's not playing. Just give us a second, so sorry.
The audio still isn't audible.
Now I'm not on mute. Can you?
No, we still can't. No,
No.
Soumya. When
So
sharing, you should have the option to share sound as well. It should be below to your left, bottom left. Oh, sorry, it's to the right. My bad.
Why we figure that out, let me just take you through some of the reasons why we think inclusive education is so important. First, obviously, it improves the learning outcomes for children with disabilities, but it has also seen to improve the learning outcomes for all children. When teachers take the effort to make their classrooms inclusive, all children together benefit from this. Of course, it promotes understanding and reduces prejudice in society. When we teach our young children at an early age about what inclusion is and what the issues faced by persons with disabilities are, they will grow up to be more understanding individuals. And it also, inclusive education also helps to equip children with disabilities to contribute to society in the fullest manner that they can. This was anyway the gist of the video as well. We were hoping to show you the video to give you some examples about how bad it is for children with disabilities when they are not provided with the support that they need. For example, a child who is using a screen reader has a lot more difficulty when textbooks are not made screen reader friendly. Just this was just to understand why inclusive education is as important as it is. So sorry about the video, but we just moved to the next section now. After the importance of inclusion, we want to take all of you through the overview of the legal framework surrounding inclusive education and especially early identification of children with disabilities. Who are children with disabilities? The RPWDA defines 21 types of disabilities, which are broadly categorized as physical disabilities, intellectual disabilities, mental illness, neurological conditions, and multiple disabilities. If a child is certified with a disability of more than 40%, They are called a child with benchmark disability. And we'll get to the difference between benchmark disabilities and regular disabilities in a bit. So what are the laws that surround inclusive education? As we've spoken, one of the most important laws that heralded inclusion in India is the Rights of Persons with Disabilities Act. The RPWDA guarantees a right to inclusive education to all children with disabilities in any schools which are either run by government authorities, funded by government authorities, or are even registered and certified by government authorities. So it's not limited to just government schools. Even private schools are required to admit children with disabilities without discrimination. Other than the RPWDA, the Right to Education Act talks about the right to free and compulsory education for all children in India. This act also includes children with disabilities and extends these rights to them as well. Building on these essential laws in our country, the education policy, the National Education Policy 2020, envisions an equitable and inclusive education for all children. And it recommends a lot of interventions, such as equipping schools with accessible resources, hiring adequate number of special educators, ensuring that all materials which children with disabilities are provided with are all accessible, and also training of regular teachers to ensure that inclusion in classroom is a holistic process. Given that the RPWDA, RTE and NEP laid out the broad mandate of inclusion, we'll now go into the specific rights of the children with disabilities which are under these laws. First on RPWDA, we already spoke about admission without discrimination. So the RPWDA guarantees that all children with disabilities will be admitted and will receive an inclusive education without discrimination as compared to other children. Other than this is the primary right to inclusive education, but it's not enough for a law to only guarantee a right to inclusive education. It needs to lay down ways in which this inclusion can be achieved. The RPWDA does this by ensuring that governments and appropriate authorities make sure that the educational institutes are accessible. They provide reasonable accommodations to children on a case-to-case basis, where their rights may not cover the specific requirements that they have. So schools are required to give reasonable accommodations to a child based on their specific needs. The RPWDA also guarantees transportation facilities for children with disabilities to and from schools. And they allow for provision of an attendant for a child with high support, which is similar to a child with benchmark disability, as we spoke about earlier. So the RPWDA recognizes that children with multiple disabilities or with benchmark disabilities may need additional one-on-one individualized support, and they allow for the provision of a attendant as well. Other than the RPWDA, there are a few schemes which also guarantee the rights of children with disabilities. These schemes, the first one of these is the Samagra Shiksha Abhiyan. The Samagra Shiksha Abhiyan broadly provides financial assistance to make schools inclusive. For example, schools can apply under the Samagra Shiksha Abhiyan to make accessibility related changes in their school, to get teaching learning material which is accessible and which helps children with disabilities. It also allows for specific monetary compensation to children with disabilities in certain cases. For example, it allows for a reader allowance, an escort allowance, a therapeutic service, a transport allowance, and a stipend for girls with disabilities. All of these interventions are aimed towards ensuring that inclusion is not hindered in the classroom due to lack of funds from schools, etc. The next scheme that we are going to talk about is the ADIP scheme. This scheme talks about the oh, I'm so sorry. 1 second. Yeah. This scheme talks about the aids and appliances that children with disabilities need, and it provides financial assistance and in some cases provides these aids and appliances themselves. Children with disabilities can apply to get accessible phones, visual aids, laptops, and note takers. Other than the ADIP scheme, the next scheme that we're going to talk about is the pre-matric scholarship scheme. So although all children with disabilities are entitled to a free education in government schools, the pre-matric scholarship schemes applies to students with disabilities in class 9th and 10th in government schools for their maintenance allowance and book grant for their maintenance allowance and disability allowance. Now that we have spoken about the rights that children with disabilities have, we also want to take you through what the grievance redressal mechanisms are that children with disabilities can avail of when their rights are not being enforced. The first one out of this is the local authorities. When there are any grievances related to the RTE Act, which is over free and compulsory education for all children, the local authority which is designated under the RTE Act has the administrative control over the school. In most cases, this is a municipal corporation or a panchayat. Other than the local authority, the primary grievance redressal and monitoring mechanism under the RTE Act is the NCPCR, National Commission for Protection of Child Rights. The NCPCI makes sure that all rights under the RTE are being implemented, and it show causes schools when these rights are not implemented. Similarly, they have a hotline available for children to call directly and children or their parents and caregivers to call directly and to submit complaints that they may have regarding the non-implementation of their rights. The NCPCR and the State Commission for Protection of Child Rights are under the RTE Act. Similarly, there is also a grievance redressal mechanism under the RPWDA Act, which is the CCPD and the SCPD. The CCPD and the SCPD protect the rights under the RPWDA. So if a child has not gotten, say, for example, a travel allowance, which was given under the RPWDA, they can approach the CCPD or the State Commission for Persons with Disabilities and file a complaint regarding that. Now that we've covered such extensive parts of this, we just wanted to see how people are doing with understanding this. So I'm going to share a small quiz with all of you, and I hope you all take part in it. We'll just take a minute to answer these questions. There are just a couple of questions. I think 50% of you have participated. We would love it if everyone is able to submit answers. Okay, let's see how everyone has done. So, which of the following is the responsibility of a school under the RPWDA? Looks like everyone got that right. It is to admit children without discrimination, to make buildings and campuses of schools accessible, and to provide reasonable accommodations to children. So, all of the above. The second question was that under the RPWDA, what is the grievance redressal mechanism? Which is the CCPD or the SCPD, as most people have selected. Great. This was a very great audience. You have retained a lot of what we've said, even though it's a lot of information. We hope this was useful. Moving forward, I'm just going to hand over to Soumya.
Hi, everybody. I am Soumya. I am a research fellow with the Vidhi Centre for Legal Policy in the Disability Inclusion and Access team. Yeah, I'm audible. So I'm going to take it from here. Since the focus of the masterclass is on the rights of children with disabilities in their early years, now we'll talk about three instrumental elements of early childhood support for children with disabilities. That is, firstly, it's early intervention, early identification, then early intervention, and then disability certification. All these three elements are necessary to ensure that children with disabilities get inclusive education, early education, care, and support. So yeah, I'll just. Is my screen visible? Yeah. So, as we all know, the period from birth to 6 years is a critical phase for growth and development. So, if there's a disability or a developmental delay, if they are identified at this point of time in the early years of a child, then necessary support, timely intervention could be ensured. In the previous section, Sagarika has addressed what a disability is. Now we'll quickly discuss what developmental delays are. So developmental delays are not exactly disabilities, but they occur when a child takes longer to reach a milestone. For example, walking or talking. For example, if there's a child who is not walking at an age where the child should start walking, then this might be a sign of a developmental delay. So both disabilities and developmental delays, if they are identified in the early years, then later it can be made sure that they get the right support, so which helps in their lives and for basically ensures inclusive education for them, so that they can go to a school and study with other students and receive the quality education on par with others. So it should ideally start before a child joins a school, but should continue throughout the schooling years. Why it is very even more important for certain types of disabilities is because there are certain disabilities that are physical manifestations. For example, if a child has locomotor disability or visual impairment, then there will be some physical signs by which parent or doctor or an educator can make it out that the child has a disability. But what if the disability is not visible? What if it's autism, ADHD, learning disability that do not necessarily have physical manifestations? So such type of disabilities might go unnoticed, which is why here early identification becomes very important. So to sum up, if early identification is done at the right time, then disability certification can be provided, timely intervention could be provided, necessary support like Sagarika listed out the different kind of support that are provided under the law that can be made available to a children with disability. These support would be available to them, which will eventually lead to better learning outcomes at school and future opportunities even when the child leaves the school. So this is, to sum up, this is why early identification of both disability and developmental delay is crucial. Now, this is on why it is important, but whose responsibility is to do it? So there are multiple groups of actors, people who do conduct early identification for children. Doctors can do it at the time of birth. There are educators who can do it at school. Anganwadi workers, parents can do it at home, and the government also conducts disability assessment camps where children can go to attend these camps and they can be identified through these camps. So this is the different type of people who can do it, but who is obligated under laws and policies of India to conduct early identification. We'll quickly talk about that. So under the Rights of Persons with Disabilities Act 2016, from here now I will call it the RPWDA. Under the RPWDA, government authorities are required to conduct surveys every 5 years to identify children with disabilities. Every school, it's the duty of the schools to specifically detect specific learning disabilities like dyslexia, dysgraphia, dyscalculia in children at the earliest. And the government is also required to screen all the children at least once a year for the purpose of identifying at-risk cases. Now, these are various legal provisions that are there under the RPWDA. Apart from the law, there are three major policies that are important in the area of early identification. Separate from these policies, there are also early intervention centers which also conduct early identification. We'll talk about them later in the next segment. So the three major policies are, firstly, it's for the Anganwadi workers. Anganwadi protocol for Divyang children is a dedicated training program that the Ministry of Women and Child Development has created. Under this protocol, all Anganwadi workers in the country will be specifically trained in early identification, which is based on the RPWDA, and then refer them for further diagnosis. Then there is Samagra Shiksha Abhiyan. A lot of you may know of it. Under the Samagra Shiksha Abhiyan, state governments get funding to organize camps for early identification of disabilities. Then the third one is Prashast program, which is for the educators to screen disabilities in students. Since Sagarika mentioned it in the beginning, how our larger goal is for inclusive education, and since a lot of participants who have joined today are educators, we will quickly go through how Prashast checklist, which can be used by the educators to screen disabilities in children. Prashast checklist it's a tool to screen disability developed by the NCERT. It's divided into two parts. Prashast 1 is for regular teachers to do first level of screening. Then Prashast 2 is for special educators to do second level of screening. From the initial poll, there are a lot of people who don't know about the Prashast checklist, and since a lot of participants are educators, it will be. I think it's best to navigate through the process. If there's any participant who has done this and want to share their experience, they can put it in the chat or can share it in the end of the presentation. So first you need to log. The Prashast checklist is administered through the Prashast app. You can see the interface in the presentation on the slide. So every head of school needs to register on the Prashast app. Basically needs to register their school on the Prashast app. After they have registered, regular teachers and special educators can log into the app after getting verification from the head of school. So how it will start is, firstly, under Prashast 1, regular teachers will conduct screening. How they will do it is they have logged in. After that, all class teachers with help of subject teachers will make an entry in the Precious app for all students in the class. So like this, they will put the information of each student. And once they have put the information of the students, the Precious checklist app will give them a checklist of 63 items. So in these 63 items, these will be different signs. So these signs will include for example, a child, a student holds the book very close to his face, or there's a child who does not respond when she is being called, or there's a child who's not tall enough for his age. So there are 63 different signs that are there in the application, and there's a tick box after it. So a teacher, just a regular teacher, they don't have to identify the disability, they don't have to do anything but go through these 63 items, observe the child, and then tick it. Once they have submitted this data, then the special educators come into the picture. Special educators will get the results that are submitted by the regular teachers, and then they will, the Precious app itself will suggest disability that the child might be having. So based on the suggestions given by the Precious app and observations made by special educator themselves, they will, at the end, they will finally submit what they think child, which disability they think the child has. So once this is done, once screening is done by both regular teacher and special educator, the data, whoever is suspected to have a disability, they will be referred to assessment camps that will be organized by the district administration. So this was the Precious app, how to do it. Some things that we need to remember. It's for the regular teachers first, that you have to screen all children. You shouldn't do it just by your instincts, but observe the children for a student for at least 15 days, for at least 2 weeks. After that, you make your observation and then fill the checklist. Based on, so Precious, the NCRT has been very clear on the fact that Precious checklist it's not for the diagnosis of disability. It's just a tool that can lead to formal diagnosis. We are only identifying what signs are there specifically for the regular teachers. You're only identifying what different behaviors that you observe in a student, and nothing beyond that. So you should not label which disability they have. You should not segregate them from the class or do anything. Apart from that, you should keep the information what you have collected official. You can, regular teachers can talk to parents in the parents teachers meeting about what they have observed. And most importantly, this was just an overview of the Precious app. This was not a formal orientation or training for the Precious checklist. What you need to do is, if you have not received this training yet, you need to inform your head of school that this we have not done this training, we have not received the training and orientation yet, and we should register for the app soon. So this is, and the training is provided by special educator, resource person, diets, etc. A little case study that I will share about Precious checklist. So to try out the checklist, the government administered the Precious program in 100 schools in Chandigarh. And out of which, after the first level of screening, Precious 1, 3,400 students were listed to have like some check boxes were filled for them. Then after part 2, the special educators identified 630 students who might have a disability, suspected to have disability. Then these 637 students were referred to assessment camps, and in the end it was found out that 95.76% of the findings of Precious checklist and the assessment camps were similar. So which basically just emphasizes the fact that how important this tool is for the educators to know and actually administer in their class. So like what we did earlier, a small quiz. If each step can, yeah. So these are the 2 questions. We'll take a minute. Yeah, so we'll go through the questions. Whose responsibility is it to identify disabilities among children in schools using the pressure staff? The right answer is regular teachers and special educators. Most of you have answered it correctly. Those who have written head of schools are responsible for ensuring that regular teachers are trained in pressure checklist. But ultimately, it's the regular teacher and special educator who will administer it. What should regular teachers do after filling the pressures checklist? Again, most of you have answered it correctly. All of it, all of the above. Share it with special educator, inform the parent, and do not segregate the children. So this was. So now we'll move on to the next. So we have understood why early identification is important. We have also noted the questions you have put in the chat box. We'll get to them later. The next step after you identify a child for disability or developmental delay is that you provide early intervention. Early intervention is basically targeted strategies that can help with the disability or developmental delay. It can either basically prevent the disability or developmental delay from aggravating. It can help with the impact of disability or developmental delay, or it just basically makes sure that despite the disability or developmental delay, the child receives equal quality inclusive education at school and get all the opportunities on par with their peers. So early intervention, in the initial poll, a lot of people know about early intervention and also about the various centers that are there. Great to know. We'll just quickly talk about them. Early intervention, these are the various points that are on the screen, are different as few examples of early intervention strategies. For example, therapies, physiotherapy, speech therapy, etc., behavioral management, cognitive development, and counseling, peer counseling, and counseling for the family, caregivers, parents, and school readiness program, which basically helps a student, a child to be ready, be prepared for the school when they have a disability or developmental delay. It can be communication, language, foundational literacy, etc. We will not get into each one of them, what these different services are. A person working in healthcare services or a therapist would be in a better position to answer what exactly these are. But what we will do in this presentation is basically tell you how you can avail these services, why early intervention is required for children with disabilities, and how can you avail the services of early intervention. So for it can happen through it can have the early intervention services can be provided at dedicated centers, NGOs, special schools, medical facilities. For for families that have the resources, they can get professional counseling, professional help on how these interventions can be availed. But for families who come from marginalized background or don't have the resources, there are certain government schemes, government programs that are there, through which dedicated centers established by the government or NGOs provide intervention services to children. This is not just for families who don't have the resources, it's for all, but basically they can avail it through these centers. Now we'll quickly talk about them. So there are 4 centers that we'll talk about. First is Cross Disability Early Intervention Centers. Now these centers are established by the DEPWD, that's the Department for Persons with Disabilities. The department has introduced these centers very recently. These centers are specifically for early intervention for children with disabilities. They do screening and identification, they provide therapy, counseling, school readiness programs, etc. There are 22 such centers in India. We will, after this, we will share a link of in what cities these centers are. So you can see if the center is in your city, you can visit the center or contact them. They have a registration desk where they will take you through the process. They will basically tell you what documents you need, require for enrolling your child into this center, what is the process. You will get to know about it from that. So after this, we'll share the list of these 22 centers. Second is the District Disability Rehabilitation Center. DDRCs, they are commonly known as. I think a lot of people would know about it. It's those who know about early identification. So there are it is a center that gets funding from Deen Dayal's Disabled Rehabilitation Scheme, administered by the DPWD. So in these centers, these are not just for early intervention, but they have a component on early intervention. They provide identification services, help with assistive devices, therapies, counseling, etc. Currently, there are 269 functional DDRCs in the country. Again, we will share a list of all these. So you can just inquire where these, if there's a DDRC in your district, you can just visit them and contact them for registration. For this, you need to have Aadhaar card and UDID. So these two documents are important to avail services under the scheme. The third one is District Early Intervention Center. Now this is again for early intervention, but unlike the previous two that we discussed, this one has a focus on treatment, medical intervention, more than early intervention, because this one is established by the health ministry. So they provide treatment and medical services. These are not just for disabilities, but for diseases and developmental delays. We will again share a list of basically things for which services can be availed at an district early intervention center. Currently, there are 363 functional centers in the country. They are usually located in the district hospital. So again, a list of the same will be shared. You visit and contact the center. Another way to avail services at the center is Anganwadi workers and school teachers under the Rashtriya Bal Swasthya Karyakram. There's a program. Under this program, they also do identification of children with disabilities. And once they are identified, they themselves refer them to a district early intervention center. The last one is Disha Center. Now, this is slightly different from the last three. They provide early intervention services to 0 to 10 children between 0 to 10 years of age. They provide early intervention, school readiness, daycare, therapies, transportation, counseling, etc. But it's only for children with autism, cerebral palsy, intellectual disability, and multiple disabilities. So if the child has one of these disabilities, then such services can be availed. So there's a national trust which has registered organizations. These organizations, we will share a list. These organizations are located at there are 40, 50 Disha centers in the country. You can visit the center. They will do the assessment. You can submit the documents like your enrollment form, ID, birth certificate, income certificate, disability certificate, proof of residence, after which you will be enrolled in the. So yeah, this was it. These were the 4 different kind of centers where early intervention services could be availed. Now again, similarly, a quick quiz. Okay, we can discuss the result of the poll. On the first question, which is which document is required for enrolling under Deen Dayal Divyangjan Rehabilitation Scheme? The answer is most people have answered it correctly. It's the Aadhaar and UDID card number. I think there has been like some confusion on this question, but that's the right answer. We will talk about UDID and disability certificate quickly after this segment. Then second question is which of the following provides exclusive rehabilitation services for children with autism, cerebral palsy, etc. So again, most people have answered it correctly, overwhelmingly actually. Disha Center, that's the right answer. All centers provide services to children with these type of disabilities, but Disha Center is exclusively for this purpose. So we are running over time. We will quickly go through our last part of the masterclass, after which Bhargavi ma'am can share her experience. So last part is disability certification. Lot of you have answered that you know what disability certification is. A lot of you are well versed with the process as well. We'll just like quickly talk about what it is and how you can get it. Disability certification is a documentation that for the type, extent, nature of the disability. And if you have this certification, if you have a certification for your disability that you have a disability, this documentation can help you in availing various facilities provided, various rights, entitlements provided by different laws and policies in the country. So there are majorly two forms of disability certification. First is, we all know about this, the disability certificate, and then the UDID card. So these are the two different forms of disability certification. Disability certificate is issued by certifying authorities under the RPWDA. These authorities are notified by state governments and union territories. UDID card is issued by the government of India, and it helps in creating a national database to make sure that the disability certification process stays uniform. Now, apart from these two, there's a third kind of certification that is available for children who are below the age of 5 and more above the age of 1 who have intellectual disabilities. So if the child has autism or any other intellectual disability and is below the age of 5, they might not get a UDID card, but a global developmental delay certificate or a temporary certificate will be issued for the child. And once the child turns 5, then a disability certificate or UDID can be issued for them. Now, this is how these two are different. They serve the same purpose. The process for applying the two is also the same. It's just UDID came into it recently came out. It was established by the central government. It helps in creation of national database, and disability certificate are usually issued by the state governments. So now disability certificate is essential for availing lot of schemes and government benefits, mostly in state government. And then now UDID card has also become mandatory for availing most of the schemes that are administered by the DPWD. So for all stakeholders, teachers, educators, parents, everybody, they need to ensure that the child has both. Since the process for applying for both is the same, so it should be ensured that both disability certificate and UDID are available to the child. Now, we'll quickly talk about the process. The process may vary from state to state, but the fundamental concept of the process will remain the same. First step is to have these documents ready that are mentioned on the screen. A recent photograph not older than 6 months, signature, identity proof, address proof, Aadhaar number / enrollment number, or if you have an existing disability certificate. Now, how you do it is, first step is you go to the UDID portal that's there on the screen. It looks something like this. There you click on apply for UDID and a registration form appears. So this UDID portal is available on swavlambancard.gov.in. This is the website, the UDID portal. Here you will fill out the form. In the form, you will be asked to upload the documents like the ones we mentioned. And then once the form is submitted, you will get an acknowledgement slip or a receipt on your email or mobile number. In this slip, you will get the enrollment number, which will be called UDID enrollment number, which is very important for the next processes. And also the details of the medical authority that will conduct your assessment. So you have to keep this acknowledgement slip with you. So now, once you have registered, now you will visit the medical authority for your assessment. You can visit the medical authority that's given on the acknowledgement slip, or if there's a nearest medical authority that is listed on the UDID portal. We will share a list of these medical authorities. Whichever one is in your district, you can just directly go to them. Now you approach the medical authority, you give them your downloaded application. It's better to carry your documents with you. Then the medical authority will assess your application, will tell you if the process will go ahead or not. Then they will, after this assessment, the medical authority will assign a specialist doctor. Specialist doctor will do the assessment. Then they will submit the report to a medical board. A medical board is usually instituted by the district. The medical board will have different kind of specialists. They will assess the report submitted by the doctor. Then they will decide what type of disability you have, the validity, the percentage of disability you have. You must have heard some people have 40%, 80% of certain disability. The validity of your disability certificate or UDID card. They basically decide that some certification would be temporary, some would be permanent. So medical board will tell the medical authority what they have decided, and based on that, the medical authority will issue a disability certificate, and after that, they will also send you the UDID card. So medical authority will provide you both certification documents through a single process. Now, it's the responsibility of the medical authorities to issue the certificate within 3 months, and or if they have rejected your application, they need to inform you in a month that they have rejected your application. One thing to remember for all the teachers and special educators that are attending the session, the head of schools are responsible under various directives of the DEPWD of the central government, that it is their responsibility that they they help students in obtaining a disability certification for them. So please have a conversation with the head of school, inform them they have the responsibility, and then they should basically facilitate the process. So yeah, this was it. Again, a small quiz. Yeah. So the first question is, which website should you visit to apply for UDID card disability certificate? Again, most people answered it correctly. It's the swavlambancard.gov.in. Next question is, what should you do after applying for a UDID card disability certificate online? Anyway, people have answered it correctly. It's the fourth option is actually the right option. You can just see the acknowledgement slip. You can go there, or you can go to a nearest authority that is listed on the UDID portal. We'll be sharing the link where all you can go. So thank you so much. Now, so we have come to the end of the presentation from our side. Now, in the end, we will take 10 minutes to hear from Bhargavi ma'am. Bhargavi ma'am is an early childhood educator. She comes with an experience of 22 years. She has a diploma in special educational needs. She has worked in the field of inclusive education for 12 years. She has served as a principal of Asha School before. Currently, she is providing voluntary support as a special needs guidance and counselor for parents, teachers, and therapists. Thank you so much, ma'am, for joining us. We will love to hear from you. After Bhargavi ma'am shares her experience, we'll quickly take the questions, and that will be the end of it. Thank you.
So thank you so much to the entire team. You've put forth an excellent. I would suggest that this should come in some national newspaper to reach as many people as possible. Though very few people read newspapers, but it will definitely help, because I keep reading, articles written by experts from Vidhi. Now, keeping that aside, mine was more a preachy kind of a lecture which I prepared, which I don't think is required here after listening to both of you. I'll just talk to you about a great experience that I can share with the entire crowd here. And Sagarika, I have mailed you a photograph of a boy. If you can just share his screen over here, the third photo. I've sent him. Yeah. So this is my favorite student. His name is Karthik. Karthik's mom approached me in the year 2017. She's a single mother. She was my classmate from kindergarten to class 10th. Me being in the Navy, we travel all over India. My friend has been in the same town, married, and she lost her husband, has been raising two boys. So Karthik was a certified child from the Nimhans of our city. I'm not using any names here. That he has dysgraphia and he has dyscalculia. Every time my friend would go to the class, because the teacher would request her to come and see the child, and he's not behaving well, he's not sitting, she would see him with his hands up and facing the wall. This is the reality. RPWD Act 2016, but this is the reality. And I'm talking to you about 2017-18, when she rang up finally. The standing and all used to happen when he was a smaller kid. He was being asked to be taken away from the school because he was interfering with the 100% result which the school always used to get. There was no scribe. Dysgraphia, there was no scribe. Dyscalculia, he was forced to learn CBSE mathematics class 9 with no accommodations, with no adaptations, nothing done to the syllabus, with no help whatsoever. So, me being in another city, I couldn't directly help her. All I did was I asked her to go and meet my dad. He's a lawyer. He gave her a copy of RPWD Act, the book. Okay. And I told Rennie, wherever you get stuck, just call up and ask me and I'll help you. And I put her through another friend of mine, Dr. Seema Lal, who's a great activist based in Cochin, who runs the NGO named Together We Can. And together, they saw to it that the school kept Karthik. Karthik got a scribe. And today, this is a photograph of Karthik posing in front of his college, IHRD, which is the Human Resource Development College, where he is pursuing computer applications. A child who was being asked to be taken away from the school is today pursuing his studies in. This is what a good law in the country and a good Samaritans who are ready to help can actually make such a big difference in Karthik's life. Just imagine what your presentation today and what you taught us today can do to the entire population in India. So, inclusivity, as I had written, is very important. Had Karthik been segregated when he was small, this wouldn't have happened. Nobody would have known what Karthik's possibilities are. Another little thing which I want to bring into your attention, because I've been working in this sphere for so long, is early intervention in India is usually looked at as 0 to 6 years, whereas anywhere else in the world it is 0 to 3 years. Most of the countries where it's a super success, by the time the child is 3 years of age, already the child would have started getting all the interventions and all necessary, and mostly in the home setup. We always send the child to the speech therapist, and one child came to me with a book in which he was just 2 years old, in which A for apple, B for bat was written, and he was being forced to make standing line and sleeping line and connect dots and all that. A 2 year old child who could not speak. Now, what is the connection? What are you trying to tell the child? That he actually, what is speech therapy for that particular child? In his home environment, he should be able to communicate. It's not always spoken words. It's about letting the mother know that I want to drink a glass of water. I want to go to the toilet. I don't want to wet my pants. This is what is important, but that doesn't happen here. Many places I have seen that there is a big gap between understanding what is early intervention as per the child's requirements and working on the abilities of the child. Very few places have I seen where they actually, if you start working on the abilities, by the time the child is about 5 years old, you can actually include the child in the mainstream school without any hassle. Thank you so much. Anything else? I mean, you can ask me questions if you want to. This is just impromptu. After listening to you, I thought this is the best thing to share.
Yes,
The reality. Yeah.
this was, thank you so much for sharing your experience. This was really helpful. Even like we
And
really,
I've even shared the UDID card of Karthik with Sagarika, which we finally managed. It was a Herculean task, but we finally managed.
clearly, so that's a very good example that shows us that this is what implementation can do. If the laws and policies in the country, they are all in place, but they're not being implemented, people don't know about them. So this was a very good example of like how we can effectively use these instruments to make the lives of children with disabilities better. And the other insights that you have shared about like how what happens in other countries and how we can do it better. This was definitely very helpful. Thank you so much, ma'am. Uh, Now we will move to the questions. If anyone has a question, we will go through the questions that are there on the chat box. Uh, People can ask questions as well.
Nidhi has asked a question.
Oh,
Nidhi is asking that it's fascinating to know that such well thought out legal enablers for children with disabilities are taking this session. However, as part of a team that works in the field of inclusive education and also being mindful of the lack of awareness in our people, let alone government school teachers, curious to know what you think is the adoption and execution of these provisions. Is there also an expectation from private schools to accommodate for disabled children? Thank you, Nidhi, so much. This is such a well thought of question. To answer the first part of your question on whether the adoption and execution of these provisions is being adequately done, in our research, we have found that in the implementation of these provisions is heavily lacking even to date. And it's not necessarily only because of the lack of understanding of stakeholders. There are a lot of systemic issues at play as well. The funding required to make major changes, accessibility related changes in schools is a very complicated process for schools. Hiring of special educators is not done at the rate at which it should be, given the pupil teacher ratios that have been mandated under the law. Um, uh, Other than that, teacher training is obviously not done for inclusive education. So it's not just about the lack of awareness of some stakeholders, it's also on top of that a lot of systemic issues which makes these problems a lot worse. We are all here trying to improve it in any way we can. On that note, we would also love to share our report with you. We've recently just released a report on inclusive education, which has a roadmap for better implementations of the provisions of the RPWDA on inclusive education. So we provided a lot of recommendations for different types of stakeholders, governments, NGOs, school teachers, special educators, to, in their own ways, improve inclusion in schools. Nidhi's second question was about the expectation from private schools to accommodate disabled children. In this respect, private schools are required to admit children with disabilities in all cases. They are not allowed to deny admission. They are also responsible to make their entire school facilities accessible. The accessibility guidelines for educational institutions are applicable to both private and government schools. So government schools are also required to provide accessible schooling. And like we mentioned in the beginning, the inclusive education section in the RPWDA is applicable to private schools as well. So they are required to also provide reasonable accommodations. They are required to provide accessible teaching learning material. So yes, I hope Nidhi that's answered your questions. Yeah, private schools are also stakeholders who need to contribute towards this.
Yeah.
Do you want to take the next question?
Yeah. So Ratendra Yadav have can everybody see the question? Yeah, they have asked the question that their daughter is she can't see anything. She has visual impairment. What should I do to raise her well? So definitely the intervention centers that we have mentioned, we will share the list soon. You can check if these intervention centers are in your district. You can go to them and ask for and basically register yourself. Uh, if the condition that you have mentioned, we will share the conditions and disabilities and diseases that are mentioned in the Rashtriya Bal Swasthya Karyakram. In the RBSK, in this under this program, if this condition is listed, then you can definitely go to a district early intervention center and get the intervention services. So on this is basically what law and policy you can avail. Beyond that, what can be done, what kind of counseling can be provided, we may not be best suited to answer that. So we'll share the link to the centers soon. Alicia has asked, are Anganwadi workers trained in identifying kids with developmental concerns? They are, but the problem is they are supposed to, but they are usually not. So there are the Anganwadi protocol Divyang protocol that just came last year. It has a component for specifically training them for identifying developmental delays and disabilities. There's also the one that I just mentioned, Rashtriya Bal Swasthya Karyakram. Under this scheme, they need to be trained. But I recently visited an Anganwadi center last month, and I asked them, the Anganwadi workers, and they said that this training was never properly imparted. So again, it's a problem of implementation. The policy for training them is there, the implementation is lacking.
I think there's a question also that maybe Bhargavi ma'am can answer. Asma has asked that how can someone become a special educator? I have a degree in English. I would love to take a special education diploma for early years. Will that be enough to be qualified?
Qualified. So in India, the rule is that you should be RCI certified. That is the Rehabilitation Council of India certified. And they have a couple of colleges who they have enlisted, and they provide the special education degree, like a B.Ed. You can also do a diploma from various institutes that offer it online, but they are not usually accepted over here. You get an overview of what is to be done and how to train the child, but it's better to be RCI certified.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Other than this, there was one other question in the Q&A, which was on about the inclusion of a child with severe disability. Aditi was asking what are the provisions for that. So if a child has a benchmark disability, which is more than 40% and is between the ages of 6 to 18, the RPWDA provides them with a choice between free education in a neighborhood school, which is a government school, or in a special school. So the child can choose to get more direct care, directed care in a special school, or they can go to a government school and they cannot be denied admission, and they need to be provided all the support that they need to get an inclusive education. I think there are no other questions. Thank you so much, everyone. This was such a great audience, and we had such a good time speaking to all of you on this. We hope that this was helpful. I'm just going to share a feedback form on the chat, and I'll just hand it over to Hita for some closing remarks.
Just one thing I wanted to add. So once you submit the feedback form, all the documents that I have talked about during the masterclass, we will share them with you. If there's any additional information linked to our report, and the video that was not we couldn't play it in the during the class, we will share the link to the video as well. So yeah, that's it. Hita, over to you.
Thank you, Soumya. Thank you, Sagarika. Thank you, Bhargavi ma'am, for sharing that very powerful experience. This has been a most informative session, and I'm so grateful to all of you for bringing this to us on the International Day for Persons with Disability. There are plenty of resources and rights, and there's a lot that law has to offer for our children with disabilities. It's for us to kind of make sure they get access to all of these advantages, and they get inclusive education. Thank you everyone for being such an engaged audience. It's been fantastic, and we'll see you in the next one. All right. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.